What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to JG's Lounge with another episode of Singed Eye Sockets, a perception podcast where, nobody's really right or wrong. It's just kind of we find a case, we talk about it, and usually we end up with a conspiracy by the end of the show. With us tonight, we've got Evolution next to me. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. How's everybody? Sean, Jukebox.
I'm doing good. Buddy? Sean, you had a pretty busy day today.
Yeah, man. Taught a class this morning and then just various work on comedy, this and that. And then I had a show at the comedy club tonight where I was the host of the Not So Newlywed Game, where jaded couples, 4 of them, got together, and I asked them all the I think one of the favorite questions that I had was for the women, which was, if your husband had a song that described him in the bedroom, would it be All Night Long, Simple Man, or This Thing's Going Down Dry?
That's good.
So that was a good time.
Good deal, man. Good. Evolution, you've been cranking out some shows, man. Actually, Sean, you just had one. Evolution's been cranking them out. Everybody that is listening or has been following the channel, we have hit 66K last month in views on social media and everything. That's fantastic. Last month was 53, so we are climbing.
Bro, moneymaker, right?
It's all Sean. Actually, Sean, I think it's your wife.
She accounts for 65,000 of the views. Oddly, all not of my shows. That's weird.
But yeah, Evolution, man, you've been getting really into it, really cranking out stuff. It's good.
Absolutely, man. I never thought that it would take off like it's been doing, but I'm okay with that. I'm doing roughly 4 shows a week now.
Wow.
So yeah, to go from nothing to that in a small period of time, I'll take it.
Yeah, dude. Yeah,
life.
Interacting with the community too is even better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sean, how was your first online show?
I mean, as smooth sailing as it possibly. I like the live, recordings and things like that. It just, I'm a bit, back in the day, nostalgic. Right. I like the older type settings. But that being said, you set up a fine podcast between me, Jerry Goebel, and myself, and the convenience factor cannot be denied, for sure.
Right. I do agree with you on the in-person concept. It's unique to the show or to the network, and I do like that as well. So I mean, it's nice to have that convenience of being able to say, hey, I mean, I got a guest, but I can't get with them, so let's do it online. So at least you know that you have that option. So
right. Well, I mean, it's just like when you interview celebs and stuff, there's certain comics, I mean, that I want to talk to, and because my schedule is crazy, it's difficult. And I mean, Goebel, I'm all the way up in Michigan, Jerry's down in Cincinnati. Sometimes that stuff just isn't possible. So thank God for technology.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. So for today's case, this is going to be a little bit more interesting, especially for me to kind of explain this, because I was trying to wrap my head around how detailed I wanted to go, because this could easily be like a 3 or 4 part topic. But I figured I'd kind of consolidate the facts, and we can kind of break them down if the questions come up. But I just want to stick to the facts. And are any of you or either one of you familiar with the Dyatlov Pass incident?
I am not.
Okay. So January 25th, 1959, there's a group of Russian tech students who decide that they are going to go on a hike. It's like a 12-day hike experiment. What? Go ahead.
I think I know what this is about because I've made a study of the occult and paranormal stuff most of my life, and if this is the thing, it is super fucked up.
It is. It's very messed up.
Okay, all right.
Initially, it was 10 students, but one of them
It was.
had. Yes, it is the same story,
Yeah, I recognize the faces.
and that's fine too. I mean, it'll be kind of a brush up on you, but you'll probably already know most of this. So one of the students did start the trip, but he had sciatic issues and ended up backing out. But all of these students went to a tech institute. They've all are very trained hikers. They've there's two females in the group. One of them even was on a hiking trip and got accidentally shot by a hunter and still finished the trip after being injured. I mean, these are trained people. They know what they're doing, and they decide they want to get their level 3 master hike. I don't even know what it was called, but basically they were trying to achieve something that hadn't been done.
Okay.
And the leader was Yuri Dyatlov, or I'm sorry, Igor Dyatlov. What's his name? At the bottom, he is 4 to the right to anybody who's watching. And so January 25th, they say their goodbyes and they're going on their trip. And they go through a few different campsites, a few different small towns and villages, and they're real friendly with the people who live there. And they get to a point where the 10th person has to back away and go back, but he takes his time going back. They were supposed to arrive back at their home camp on February 12th. Are we on board so far?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that doesn't happen. And the 10th person who went back took so much time, he didn't even get back till after they were supposed to show up. And these kind of hikes, you can plan dates, but it was like 200 miles that they were going to hike over the course of these days. And them not making it back to the home camp on the 12th wasn't really suspicious. It was like, okay, maybe weather, whatever, put them behind a few days. So there wasn't really an expedition to go looking for them until the 25th of February. They were supposed to arrive back at the home camp on the 12th. So I just want to get that little basic information out of the way.
Okay.
And this hike is through the Siberian mountains, and the temperatures are negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Crazy winds, and I mean, these guys are really challenging themselves. So February 1st, sometime between February 1st and February 2nd, all 9 of these members end up frozen dead out in the wilderness, missing clothes, injured. And really, it's the situation that they were in, and some of the clues and the stuff that was left behind that makes this really strange. Before I get into that, have you guys ever been hiking?
No.
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
More than quite a few times.
Where'd you go hiking?
Oh, good Lord.
Just around in the Midwest or anything crazy?
No, I mean, I've been hiking in the mountains of West Virginia and the deserts of Utah, around the Midwest, on the coasts. I mean, you name it. I mean, I've hiked, nothing super crazy like 200 miles or anything like that, but, a couple times with some appreciable amounts, like 10 miles.
Okay. All right. For me, it was like Colorado, Montana, Utah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I've done a lot of mountain hiking out there. Nothing like this. It wasn't like a crazy, it was a 6-day trip, whatever. Anyways, they're supposed to be back on the 12th. They left on the 25th. It was at like 12 days or something like that is what it ended up being. But they were supposed to be gone. But I, camped out in the woods and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are literally building their own tents and everything during this trip. And so February 1st, I guess let me throw this out there. This guy on the bottom left, his name's Semyon Zolotaryov. He is 37 years old, and the rest of these kids are 20 to 23. So he's the only one in this group that's kind of the odd one out. And all the research I did didn't really show him as really too suspicious of a character. He kind of won the group over. Real funny guy, real nice. And I mean, as far as we know, because some of them had journals and stuff that they found, and there was nothing suspicious about him in the information. They did have 4 cameras, and they did retrieve some photos of basically up till the first of stuff that they did, but there's no information about the incident. So on the night of February 1st, they set up their tent, and at some point in the night, something happened that caused them to panic and leave the tent. And they didn't leave through the front of the tent. They left through the back, and they cut their way out from the inside. And this is the first kind of weird thing about this whole situation, because these are experienced hikers. They were all getting along, and something happened that caused a freak thing for them to not only not gather their clothes in negative 22 degrees weather, but they literally all just ran out the back, and even the tracking is kind of they're scattered, and then all of a sudden they're a straight line, and they're all going away from the tent. And that's all the tracks that the investigators ever find. So at first, I want to kind of discuss what do you guys think realistically could have happened inside the tent to cause them to flee out the back?
Sean, you go first.
Again, these are all trained people. So, I mean, I'm trying to go based off realistic information. And there are some hints and stuff later on that I'll bring up as far as like
my first thought would be a polar bear, but there's no other tracks.
No. I did see a comment on a TikTok that I was watching that said there's a spider in the tent.
A spider? In those temperatures? I don't think so.
That must have been a creepy ass spider. Okay, so my knowledge of this whole thing, it probably does not go near the depths of, what you've researched, Jukebox, but I am aware that they had to bust out of the tent, and I've heard all kinds of theories about what it is. Yeti is one of the predominant theories, that they heard the yowling, in the distance of the Yeti screaming at them.
Right.
It's just,
why is it doing that?
Unless they like somehow put their tent over some methane pocket on top of an ice field, because that can happen, on lakes and things like that, where they went nutty nuts. There had to be some force that, and this is why this thing has made its way into the occult and paranormal world, where people are looking at it, that to make you lose all concern of self and run out into negative 22 Fahrenheit, and that kind of, just minutes. All right. And you're toast. And for everybody to be scattershot, but then to be gathered into one straight line running away. I've heard Yeti, but I have my own theory. Kind of nuts, but I want to hear more.
Yeah, and I kind of want to discuss that towards the end too, because there's one of them that does kind of make sense to me, and we'll discuss that after we kind of. I want to go through how they were found and sort of some of the medical conditions that they were in. Have you heard of any of that stuff, Sean?
Bits and pieces. This is one of those ones where you see the reports and things, and it's you get little bits of information about the actual folks in some of the research that you have, but then everybody's theories that this is like the funnel, just all this massive information of I think this or I think this, instead of I think actually trying to break down, looking at exactly what happened to everybody. So, right. Like I said, bits and pieces.
Right. Yeah. So first and foremost, they didn't actually show up to the campsite until the 25th of February. And this did happen. They're guessing based off the journal entries and everything on the night of the February 1st. They found the tent, which was partially still up. The only reason they found it was because one of the posts was still up and part of the tent was still up, and the rest of it was pretty much caved in. The stuff inside of the tent, their clothes were still there. All 4 cameras that were actually on the registry. They made them register all of their like equipment and tools on a registry, which is even weirder because one of the members that were found had a camera on them that wasn't registered.
Hmm.
Okay.
And again, they didn't bother grabbing their clothes, but they somehow managed to grab the camera, which makes it a little weird. But so about the first few were found earlier on in the morning was 21-year-old Yuri Durashenko and 23-year-old Yuri Krivonoshenko. I think that's pretty accurate. I'm sure I'm not rolling enough R's there, but they were both basically pronounced dead from hypothermia, frozen to death.
Sure.
They had burn marks and multiple abrasions. And then they found 2 more closer in the afternoon. They found 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov and 22-year-old Zenyata Kolmogorova, one of the females. They both looked like they'd been trying to return to the tent when they died. A few days after that, the body of Rustam Slobodin was also discovered. He had a fractured skull. The remaining hikers were found in a ravine on May 5th, so several months later, after there was a thaw, and one of the local tribe, Munsee tribe, were out with their dog, and they found one of the, I think they found some of the cloth, and maybe one of the hands were sticking out of the snow. They found Nicola Stubio with a caved-in skull. 24-year-old. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good. His skull was caved in, and they actually found bone fragments in his brain. 24-year-old Alexander Kolbatov had a deformed neck and was missing his eyebrows. The oldest hiker, Semyon Zolotrov, and 20-year-old Ludmila Dumanaya, or something like that, had crushed chest with multiple broken ribs, both missing their eyes, and Ludmila, her tongue was missing.
Huh.
Yes. So that's just kind of the rough breakdown. I got a lot more details about them, but I kind of wanted to throw that out there first. So clearly they endured something pretty intense. What do you guys got?
Well, there was 2 women.
Yes.
And 7 guys. So
Right.
to me, that's a problem already, especially out there in the cold. So I'm thinking there's a little bit of jealousy somewhere. And there's also a 10th person who decided not to go. That's where I'm leaning towards. The 10th person who came back after the date to try to look innocent, with the bashed heads in and all the other ways that they were found. And for the person to take their time coming back, there's a bit of a mystery there and a why. What you got, Sean?
Oh, dude. Okay. Look, first of all, you have eyebrows missing, burn marks, eyeballs missing, tongue missing, things of that nature. All these weird, questionable, just I could understand if, some forest creatures found them and they got nibbled on in the most general sense. But when you have specific parts missing, and I can see maybe that other one is a serial killer, right? And took specific items from, biologic items from the people.
Right.
Okay, that's possible. But because of, they say lack of tracks and things, I mean, if you want to get weird on this one, and we know aliens exist because the government I mean, I knew beforehand, many did, but the government finally admitted, yeah, they exist, so we know
Right.
it's official in the record books. I have always had an inkling that this had, and Siberia is just so crazy with like tales of Yetis, and further to the east, the Siberian, the Mongolian sandworms, and all the weird cryptids that are out there.
Right.
This one just smacks of alien to me,
Hmm.
alien
And
technology.
it really does. And I want Sean, you're on a good point. There's another reasoning that does kind of make sense to me, which we'll kind of explain later on. But evolution, what do you got?
Well, they're all experienced hikers.
Yes.
That kind of jumps out at me. So for them to freak out and cut their way out the back of a tent, it had to be something pretty extreme or something that none of them have seen before. I'm really not gonna go to the alien yet unless I get a little bit more. But I'm still thinking it's probably either one of them or somebody, period, that might have went a little crazy in the cold.
Yeah, and the craziness, there's a lot of explanation that could possibly cause one or multiple of them to actually kind of go nuts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're talking about these negative temperatures, bitter cold, and probably high pressure winds.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something called the catamonic winds, and
Mm-hmm.
it basically or cataponic is I might be mispronouncing it, but anyways, basically the way that the wind blows at high speeds as it whips around cliffs and stuff can create basically mini tornadoes, and the sounds that they dispense are so high frequency that they can actually cause people to kind of go a little haywire. So that is one of the theories.
So aliens is crazy, but screaming tornadoes, that's what we're hanging our hat.
Somebody that lives in the Midwest. That's one of the theories. That's one of the theories. Okay?
Officer, I wasn't going to hit my wife, but then that screaming tornado.
Those damn catabolic winds made me do it.
Here we are again.
That would be I wonder if you could get out of a case where that I didn't mean to kill him, but those damn catabolic winds.
Yeah. I don't know, but look, guys, I think the thing, you have to think about human psychology and how people react to things and fight or flight, response and all of that. And if, and I mean, without being there and having the logistical kind of topography,
Right,
to know what way the tent was facing, all this stuff. But if we're thinking of just like let's say a tent that they've got the pole set up, and it's, say they did something even a bit more advanced and it went, sloped down and it had sides. All right. But it's still pitched at the, at both ends, like, standard camping tents would be
right,
back in the day. Something on the front side or the opening side, if they didn't lose their minds to winds or methane gases or temperature, whatever it is, all right, if we remove those variables and just say, those conditions were normal, then whatever was on the opening or at the opening was so terrifying that they literally turned around, cut their way out, and ran into negative 20-degree weather.
right,
To get away from it.
right.
What the hell could that have been? What could have
Exactly.
been so scary that the negative 20-degree weather was less of a threat than whatever was at that opening?
And the only possible explanation that I could come up with, based off the fact that there was no other tracks. I mean, could small critters have done it? I don't think that there would have been anything like, even if it was a wolf or something, if they can find the feet tracks from people, I would at least think that, a pack of wolves or anything, they would at least have found traces, even with crazy winds and everything.
Well, see, that's the thing. That's where the experienced hiking comes in.
Right.
If somebody wanted to cover up some tracks in ice or snow, it can be done.
Right.
And then I'm looking at the ages that you mentioned.
Yeah.
The majority of them was between 20 and 23, and then you had this 37-year-old.
Right.
So
Well, he's one of the dead too, though. Like, he's one of the last one found. Like, he made it to the very last trek that they got to and passed away with the group. So it's kind of hard to really pinpoint him when he was one of them.
And how does 37 make him creepy?
Well, I didn't say it made him creepy. It just made him stand out.
It does make him stand out. I mean, he joined at the very last minute too. Like, it was like the last couple of days. He's like, "Hey, I'm tagging along." But again, I don't know. It is weird. It does stand out, and also the fact that nobody in the group actually knew his real name. He went by Sasha.
Really?
But nobody in the group knew his actual name. And again, one of these people had a camera that they did not register, that they had on their body, that they grabbed during the panic of leaving. So there's more. That's
kind of what people do. I think they were probably getting information. You know how people do when there's a group of people. You're not supposed to do this, and there's always one. But it's even more interesting. Now he stands out even more because nobody knew his name. Why would you go on a camping trip to those measures in those extremes with somebody that you don't know?
Right. Yeah, most of these are all students that went to the same school. They all kind of knew each other somehow. But
I mean, I guess I'm thinking now. I mean, they don't know his name, so if somebody finds out something and he doesn't want them to tell, of course he cuts their tongue out. And if somebody sees something that they shouldn't have seen, maybe he takes some eyeballs out. Just a thought.
Okay, but what about the eyebrows? Should they have not raised their eyebrows suggestively at him?
Well, I want to let you know that he was one of the two that were found with no eyes, so that kind of rules that one out.
Okay. But you know how when somebody licks a pole in the cold,
right,
and their tongue sticks, maybe that happened with the eyebrows. Maybe they poured some water on some ice or something and like banged his head into it, and then when they pulled it off, the eyebrows were still there. Just a thought.
Damn, that ice looks surprised.
All right, so let's kind of get into a few of these deaths here. Okay, so the first two, which was Yuri, something or another. There's two Yuris. They both were found. Let's see. We got Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krevenchenko were found by a cedar tree closest to the tent. They had there's a few things that kind of stick out here. There were branches broken off of this tree up to 15 feet high of the tree.
15 feet?
Up to 15 feet. And part of the weirdness to this is that some of the people who were investigating said that these branches aren't just easy to take off. Like, even hanging from them, it would be difficult to break these branches. And the branches were broken all the way up to 15 feet of the trunk. Both the bodies had plenty of abrasions, they bruised, and one of them actually had chewed their knuckle and had it in their mouth when they were found. They had a chunk of their knuckles was in their mouth, and had the other one had blood out in their mouth and their nose. And they were found around what looked like there was a fire that might have lasted about an hour, according to investigators. What's weird to me is the fact that there was up to 15 feet high, these burn marks. And even the investigator said that was even more suspicious was that one of them had burn marks on their head and their arms, which would kind of indicate that maybe they were so frozen that they were sticking them legitimately into the fire. But based on the surrounding area, he said some of the tree tops were even burned. Like, the actual surrounding trees in the woods were burnt on top of the trees.
That's interesting.
That is interesting.
Aliens. See, okay, so I do remember the something about the branches and things, and
Mm.
where it becomes, but okay, going back to what evolution said, an experienced tracker, an experienced woods person, an experienced hiker knows
Mm.
how to read tracks, cover tracks, all that stuff. I mean, I grew up in the country, man. We learned how to do all that kind of stuff, right?
Hmm.
So let's go over here now into this pocket of cryptids and things like that. Say it was Yeti. All right. Well, if a Yeti is this mystical creature thing from that area of the world, it's going to know how to cover its tracks. Of course, it has, because it's kept itself hidden for all these centuries, right?
Hmm.
But it would make sense if these guys had treated themselves to get away from this thing, and it is just swiping at him to get him out of the tree, right?
Hmm.
Right.
But the treetops and all that stuff with the burn mark, I go back to again the burn marks on those people. Like your explanation sounds, fairly plausible. With they're just so out of their mind trying to get warm that they just basically lean themselves into the fire. Okay,
Yep.
but were they the only ones with burn marks?
Right. And we'll keep going here.
Right.
Um,
And,
so
and I'm
go ahead.
I'm thinking it's 1959, so they don't have the gadgets that we have today as far as lighting fires or climbing tools or anything like that. So that's kind of what jumped out at me as Sean was talking.
Right. I do want to kind of correct one error that I had in case somebody watching this says something. It was February 27th, not the 25th. That is my fault. I apologize, everybody.
Podcast around.
Let's throw this whole case out. I'm
Yeah,
totally
that's going to really change up everything now. Jeez.
Those extra 2 days.
Yeah, I got to recalculate everything now.
Okay. Okay. So the leader was the next to be found. Igor
Mhm.
Dyatlov was found around 11 in the afternoon or early noon. He was found face up, heading back towards the tent. Above the snow, they found his hands. They were clenched up towards his chest. He had an unbuttoned jacket on, which the investigator said was unusual, being that they were, such bitter cold winds, and these are like experts. The fact that his jacket was unbuttoned, I don't know. Out of all of these things, I don't know why that's suspicious.
Mm.
Let's see what else it says. Case he left the vest to one of the guy who came back. It was his vest. The guy who survived, who turned away. He had given it to him. He had minor abrasions on his forehead, minor abrasions on his eyelids. His complexion was a brownish red. Dried blood on his lip. His lower jaw had missing incisors, and mucosa was intact. That suggests his tooth was lost long before the trip. Bruised knees without blood. Both ankles had brownish red abrasions. A single incision in the lower third right tibia. Metacarpophalangeal joints on the right hand had brown red bruises, which is an injury that could have been from a fight at some point, which can be kind of an idea that maybe there was something that happened between somebody there. There was no internal injuries, though, for him. It does say he had a full bladder. I don't know why the hell that's in there. Next to him was found Zenaida, one of the girls. She was face down towards the tent. Skin and face had a purplish red tone. She was better dressed than the bodies underneath the cedar. They said that she actually probably took some of the clothes from them, which is pretty tactical, and is what you would do in a situation like this. For anybody that's experienced, if you're starting to lose some of your group, you do take their clothing in situations like this. They even said that they lined the bodies up underneath the cedar tree, so those who were still alive that left them there actually kind of did something, that's proper to kind of rotate them and give them proper placement. So there wasn't anything going on during this whole time because they had time to do that. So she was found. The autopsy said just hypothermia due to violent accident. Medical examination said that Zanita was not sexually active during the time of death. I don't know why that's relative.
Hmm.
Oh, she did have a prior relationship with Igor Dyatlov, the lead guy.
Ha!
She
I was correct. No, I'm just
yeah,
kidding.
she had a fracture on her the front of her head, so her skull was cracked.
Hmm.
And that's all I have for her. So far we've got the first four. We know that two of them headed back. So at some point, four of them went a different direction from the first of them. What do you guys got so far?
This was heading back. They went in
Yeah.
direction
So basically, two of them decided to go back.
to the tent.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
whatever was going on in the tent must not have been too terrifying for them to decide to go back.
Or they felt like it was gone.
Mhm.
Right. What you got,
Right.
Sean? I'm pondering.
It feels like, okay, you remember I think it was John Carpenter's 1980-ish film, The Thing,
Right.
with Kurt Russell, and how this was it was the the horror movie trope of picking apart the group one by one, so the same as like the movie Alien, right?
Right.
Where one by one they're taking the soldiers are getting killed off, and it's starting to get that feel where this group gets scattered, and this didn't happen over just one night, and people were freezing, and then you've got one with a cracked neck and all this stuff. It just seems like, I don't know, I feel like there's something out there in the darkness
Like kind of
haunting
just
them.
taking them out. Yeah.
Yeah, one or
Which
two at a time.
Yeah, and that's the thing about this case is it's so open to be anything. And I mean, yeah, you
Right.
could be a realist. Yeah, you can say, okay, well, science proves it. Science says this, but it doesn't really prove it. It's just an option. It's just that's all it is.
It still seems like there's some missing information.
There is, and here's one of the things. So during the people who are investigating, so they decide to send out. You have civilians, you have
Hmm.
the local Munzi tribe that are helping. You have the KGB, which is the Russian CIA. Why are they involved?
Hmm.
They're involved in this whole investigation,
Yeah.
and the investigation ends up closed on May 5th. We're kind of jumping around a little bit, but we always do on all the shows, which is fine. And actually, the lead guy, his name's like Liev something. He's like the lead investigator. 35 years after this, comes out and talks about how he had to turn everything over to the KGB on May 5th after the conclusion of the results of the investigation.
Hmm.
And they shut everything down. It's even hard to find this case in Russia. Like you can't find these files. I mean, you can today, but it's hard to find in the country.
Okay, so we know that there were so many men and so many women. Now I'm thinking, who were they and what did they do?
Right. And here's something. I guess this is a good point to kind of take a little break from this. We'll get back into it, but there was a nuclear testing facility not far from where they were hiking through at the time that exploded about a decade prior, and one of these members worked at that plant cleaning it up after the explosion. The reason this is interesting is because everybody had radiation on them, which is also very weird. And the fact that there was that much enough to be lingering on all the bodies, there had to be some sort of exposure to it. Some of the scientists decided that it doesn't really add up because it was a decade prior, and to have that amount of radiation still on the clothing to be able to spread across all of them, it would have had to have been not washed. And why would it be there with them? And then there was another explanation saying that lanterns back then and lamps used something that would give off radiation, like in the whatever the oil was that they used, which could kind of explain it.
Yeah, that tracks. I mean, for God's sake, they used to sell science kits to kids in the 1950s in this country with irradiated pieces of. I mean, you know what I'm talking about, like
Right.
actual radium or whatever it is, and they could take the Geiger counters to it and everything, and the kids were like straight up getting radiation off, poisoning off of it.
Right.
I mean, hell, my parents were antique dealers, and there's what the hell is the glass that it's irradiated and it glows in blue light? What the hell is that called?
I don't know.
Anyway, point is, things were very loose back then. But here's my question: do we know exactly where they went to by the time they got to where that campsite is? Because perhaps if the dude worked out there and there was some shit that they wanted to see, because on some of the hikes that I've been on, we went to places we weren't supposed to go because we wanted to see some cool shit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
That explains the extra camera.
Well, and the extra person that ended up backing, he made it as far as one of the stops was an abandoned facility that he wanted to see. And that's why he pushed through, even with the sciatic issues and some of his other health problems. He pushed until that point, and that's when he decided to go back. So there were stops that they wanted to do. There were little towns and stuff that they wanted to visit, and even some of the townspeople that they met said that they had a good time with them. One of the members played like it was a ukulele or something like that, and they said that they just had a good time listening to music, and but nobody had a bad experience with any of the group. But some of the theories are that one of these guys was involved with the KGB and was meeting them up there to give them something, which is plausible. I mean, it's definitely not too far out there, especially if there's a nuclear facility up there that's possibly getting covered up, because actually that wasn't even released in Russian documentation until the 70s. So after this even happened, they didn't even release that that the explosion ever occurred. There were towns that were affected, and they were like hushed to not talk about it either until after this was released. Then it kind of started to spread the word about it, so they didn't even find out about that factor until well after this investigation.
That might explain the burning of the top of the tree and the tree limbs.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And aliens are known to be around nuclear plants.
Mm-hmm. And
I'm just saying there is that.
Well, no, and also, I mean, if you look at crop circles as an example, where they talk about the different things being laid down perfectly flat and burned at they're irradiated. Okay. And that's pretty consistent in the crop circle communities. So, here's Michael. What the fuck? What with these alphabet agencies?
Right.
Why not I know humans en masse are stupid. Okay. Except for all of our listeners and fans. Outside of them, why not just tell us the truth?
Right.
Why not just tell us, some aliens came down and fucked these people up. You could say serial killer. Okay, fine. But you have this evidence salad where all these things are being tossed in. Nothing makes sense. Nothing is consistent. There's no MO. And this person that did all this stuff had to be incredibly scary and strong, because you say there's a deformed neck. So that means somebody had to take one of these campers and like that. And it's not like
they're saying that didn't kill him.
Jesus. What is it with these Russians? Jesus Christ. No, I've only been shot. Let us finish hike. Not a problem. No, just broken neck.
One of the men was actually known for apparently wrestling an actual bear. There's documentation of it. One of them apparently faced on a herd of horses, like stampeding towards them. So I mean,
Jeez.
these are people who are like high intensity thrill seekers. So I mean, if they did go nuts, I mean they could hurt each other, but the problem is some of these uh injuries are too intense for a human to have done it. Um, some of them, the investigators were saying like it's like car crash style bone fractures and broken chest and rib, like caved in chests and ribs were broken. Like this wasn't just a fist fight between some guys.
Right. And the physicality that it takes to snap like a human femur as an example, that is an incredible amount of strength, like
Right.
insanely strong. So it's again with just the preponderance of all these different pieces, and if you try to aggregate everything to one place and say, okay, put all these puzzle pieces together, none of the edges fit.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And let's get back to the bodies. So the fifth person, Rustem. So all of the bodies that we've found so far, the first four that they found were February 27th, and now let's fast forward to May 5th. They
Mm-hmm.
don't find any more until May 5th. We're talking 2 months later, almost 2 months later, a month and a half. One of the Munzi tribe find Rustem during the thaw, and he's not far from the last two, the leader and the first female. And he was also facing the tent, so he was trying to get back as well. He was the most clothed, which would make sense if he survived from all of them. He could have taken extra clothing from them. He did have abrasions on the forehead, abrasions on his upper eyes, left eyebrow, minor abrasions on his cheek, dried blood on his lip, his lower jaw. Oh wow, he had similar ones to the last female. Um, Wounds on second and fifth finger on the left hand, um, and that's all it says for him. So there wasn't a ton. Then later, down by the ravine, they found the last four people. We've got, let's see here. Bear with me. I'm scrolling. Ludmila Dubinina. She was wearing short sleeves and along with a long sleeve over that, two sweaters. So some of these they gathered clothes on their way down. She was missing her eye sockets, missing her eyeballs. Her nose cartilage was broken and flattened. So her nose was gone. There was no nose. Her upper jaw was exposed, missing her lip, her upper lip. Her second, third, fourth, and fifth rib were broken on the right. Her second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth were broken on the left side. They could find fracture lines on them. Massive hemorrhage in her heart. They found coagulated blood in her stomach, which means that her tongue was removed before she died, which is pretty freaking weird. And the older one, Sasha, they all had the broken rib. Like they both had broken ribs and their eyeballs missing. His second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth on his right side were broken. An open wound on the right side of his skull was exposed, with bone fragments in his brain. So, I mean, some of the theories are that they fell into the ravine, but they like built like a den in the snow by this ravine. This ravine's next to like a little creek bed, and they survived. Somehow they managed to build this ravine. Like they had like wood laid out, like they were trying to survive. What do you guys got so far with these? These two had the most injuries.
I think whatever it was caught up with them.
Yeah.
I think that be it aliens, whatever it was, this thing that was taking them out one by one. They'd wake up the next day, the person would be dead. So they were lining them up by the tree, collecting, their clothing and everything, just, like, hey, this person's dead. So they're collecting their shit. Finally it gets to the point, where if, I'm a writer. Okay.
Right.
If I'm doing the screenplay on this, the next move is, just kind of a deductive reasoning. These two were like, we've got to get out of here or we're going to die. So they make my first thought was, yeah, they fell because it sounds like a traumatic injury. Right. But they tried to build something in the ravine to stay warm and safe. And the coagulated blood in the stomach, meaning the tongue was removed before. So that's not a fall, unless she bit off her tongue in the fall and all the blood ran down her throat into her stomach. Right. But you're talking about a convergence of so many like little things for that to happen and be factual, and even remove the fact that both of their eyes are just gone.
Yep. Right.
Well, I mean, there was this radiation. Not sure how strong or powerful it was, but I'm sure that could have some type of effect on the individual, depending on what type of radiation and how it was distributed, I guess. And definitely they were probably running from something or somebody.
Right.
And all kinds of stuff happened, in that environment. You can trip and fall, of course, or somebody can trip you, but I mean, even in a small group like that, if something comes after you or someone and you start running, we all know how that can end up. Somebody can trample over somebody else or just push them out the way, or throw them behind them so that they won't be the next one to get got. I'm still thinking it was somebody who, or someone, they mentioned the KGB. Maybe they went somewhere and found something that they weren't supposed to find.
Right.
And which activated a response. And that's why the files disappeared.
Right.
That's what I got.
So we still have two people here. Alexander Kolvatov. He had, so the last four, they were all basically next to each other in the den. That's one thing that I can't say is that they were all found in this den. One was kind of hunched over. Alexander had a lack of tissue around his eyes and eyebrows. His eyebrows were missing. His skull bone was exposed. The bridge of the nose was straight, but the cartilage was soft and palpable, which made for unusual mobility. It wasn't necessarily broken, but they couldn't confirm whether it was or not. He had an open wound behind his ear, a deformed neck, diffuse bleeding in the underlying tissue of the left knee, softened and whitened skin of the fingers and feet. Sign consisted with putrefaction in a wet environment. And he had a kind of a grayish green color to him. And then the last one, Nikolai Bragniol. I know I said that wrong. He was the most protected from the cold, which the investigator said he was probably outside of the tent whenever the threat occurred because he was so well dressed. Yeah, he had a coat on. He had several sweaters, for hats, knitted woolen hats. His bottom, he was protected with cotton pants, ski pants. So they're thinking that he was actually already outside of the tent. He even had boots on. It says he had multiple fractures to the temporal bone with extensions to the frontal and sphenoid bones. The close-up of fractures to the skull is shown on the picture. Oh, you guys can't see the picture. Bruise, it's just like a almost like a mannequin's face with some points on it. Bruise on the upper lip on the left side, hemorrhage on the lower forearm, and that's all they have on him. So that's all of them. I mean, the two that got it worse was the older guy and the second girl. They had the broken rib. The Ludmilla, she had the broken ribs and the missing eyes and the missing tongue. But that's it as far as how they were. And most of them had burn marks on them. Not all of them, but I mean, there were signs that they tried to build like fires and stuff, which would explain. I mean, when you're at that intense cold and you start to go numb, a lot of the reports that I saw said that that's not uncommon because they can't feel the heat. So they're literally sticking their body parts into the fire.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I got as far as the information goes. I mean, there's definitely a lot more detailed information you could get into. You could track it. Again, a lot of the research I did, some of the podcasts I listened to were several parts, but I didn't want to get that too in depth because realistically, I gave all the factual information. There's more to it, but it's not going to affect the outcome of what I told you.
Mm-hmm. So basically, the guy who had the most clothes was outside.
Yes.
He got infected by.
He was, which makes sense.
Right. He got infected by radiation, so his mind was tripping. So he took all their clothes and said, I'm not going to die out here in this cold. And the chick and the guy that got beat up the worst, he had a thing for her. So he saw them doing some stuff. So he said, you'll never look at each other again. So he took their eyes out. And then the other girl was like, you know what? I'm going to tell. And he's like, no, I'm going to take your tongue from you. Or was that the same person?
You're just kind of throwing out some random ass story.
and then the guy that turned back at the end, he's like, you know what? This seems a little weird. I'm going to back out because, I just got that feeling, But he took his time going back, which, means he was in on it, and then kind of instead of using the story, took his time going back. He actually followed them and waited till all the damage was done, and then did the arrangement of everything to make it look weird and stupid, and then made his way back to civilization. That's what I got, Sean. What you got?
Aliens. It's strange,
Yeah.
I mean, and actually this is cool because there was a lot more information than what I had familiarized myself with years ago about this. But it's weird because it's like there was an investigation, but yet if the KGB was trying to totally lock this thing down, there would have been no investigation. The alphabet groups just sweep in, do their thing in the under the dark of night, and nobody's the wiser, right?
Right.
Why are they working alongside people and then taking all the information at the end? If this was something where it was straight up KGB involvement, we wouldn't even know about this.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It would have stayed secret. Yeah.
Right. So this tells me this was something that happened. Excuse me. And, this wasn't after, like, they're figuring stuff out and they found out something that couldn't get released to the public, either because of, they're trying to hide their damn secrets, which all those groups do because they're all fucking evil, or they found something that would set the population ablaze with just, information that would, kick us out of our daily, what we think reality is, and, set the population on fire. So, we can't know about that because, but the thing that is messing with me is not even the eye sockets and things so much, because there are critters out there that nibble on dead people.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about tissue that's going to be the easiest to bite on is, that's going to be like your eyeballs and things.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's known. I mean, your pets will do. I mean, dogs and if they're left alone, they will eat that.
Right,
Or,
exactly. Okay, so you could explain those things away, but the consistency, because they didn't say it was like wind burn and things.
Mm-hmm.
You would think that would be in the report, but you had consistent abrasions to the forehead, eyes, things like that. So it's like every one of these people got at least beaten about the head
Mhm.
Right.
by something. So there's a consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have, the eyeballs, which is a consistency. You have the absolute damage done to somebody that is far beyond what, you know, unless it's just a massive, massive dude, like, even beyond what I was when I was powerlifting, beating on these people with, a tool, which you would have seen in the autopsy reports. And then that guy's neck just deformed and twisted around.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems so like there is something that came at these people that is beyond.
Right. And that's kind of my stance on it. I did go through a lot of like the conspiracy theories, like the local tribe, the Muncie tribe, were a bunch of very small people.
Mhm.
And actually, this was like uncharted territory. This wasn't even their territory. Um, they were around in the area, but they didn't. They even helped in the investigation. They even had reports of having run-ins with them, and they were fine. Like there was no issues.
Mhm.
Right.
The wind theory does make sense, but it doesn't in the sense. To me, it's speculative because of how much damage was done and the fact that a lot of the injuries and the broken body parts and multiple reports said that it was too aggressive for a person to have done it.
Mhm.
Right. Right.
I even looked at the Yeti theory and did some research into the of Yeti attacks, supposed Yeti attacks, and most of them aren't attacks. Most of them, the reports show, are that they are attacked by rocks that are thrown by the Yetis from a distance. They never actually
Ah,
approach the people, which could make sense for the broken or the fractured heads and stuff like that.
Right.
But they wouldn't have been physically attacked by them. Like that's the other thing. So like if there was any fighting going on, it was most likely not with a Yeti. If the Yeti was the case.
Right.
It
but then
also
you would have had some type of tracks.
yes. And yes, they're heavier. If they could find the tracks of the people, there probably would have been some other tracks.
Mhm.
The 15 feet of broken branches is weird to me because I don't see anybody in the negative 20 degrees half naked climbing 15 foot up a tree and breaking all of the branches off to build a fire like that. I don't see the strength to do that. I mean, I don't know. And
Well,
it actually, it affect a lot of the investigators that wrote the reports even said like it would have been extremely difficult for a human to have broken those branches.
So
And
those
they
might
were there, so it's not like it happened over time. Like they were using the brush to do a fire, but how? Like it doesn't make sense to me,
hmm,
And the burned treetops, like I could see, like for me, my theory is the nuclear plant maybe wasn't completely gone, and there was still some experiments happening. We know that experiments happen even in our country. There's areas that we can't go to and that they do experiments, whatever, whether it's extraterrestrial or whatever new technology, it's out there. I mean, there's
right.
nuclear devices out there now that will blow us the earth over 4 times right now that we do know about. Just think about what we don't know.
Right.
So if there was tests going on and they happen to see something in the sky and somebody noticed a light or something coming from their tent, that could cause them to come and cause harm, remove the people who saw it, which would make sense for covering up the tracks. So
Mhm.
personally, I think that the KGB was involved somehow, and I think that the older guy who joined the group was probably somehow involved to maybe kind of deter them from being directed towards that.
Mhm.
If we're going realistic. Now, I also believe that aliens exist. I think our universe is huge, and it would be stupid not to think of that, And if you don't, whatever, but that's just how my mindset is. And if they're far more advanced and they know we have the kind of technology to explode the Earth, they're probably going to be monitoring it. So they could have been there. They could have done something as well. So, I mean, it would either be Russian government hiding stuff or aliens. Out of all of the theories that I've seen, those make sense.
How about
Oh.
irradiated Yeti?
I think the radiation makes sense with the lambs.
He's pissed. He's coming down from the moon. He's mad at the humans.
Yeah. He's not your normal Yeti. He's pumped full of just some radiation.
He's a Hulk. He's the Hulk. It's
right.
the Incredible Hulk Harrier. It's, again, this is just such a convergence of so many different things. And the thing is, any one of them by themselves is strange.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes this particularly irksome as far as trying to figure something out or get some sort of perspective on it. Because the branches by itself, yeah, there are lots of ways you could explain it away. But if these were not just branches, but limbs, if that's what we're talking about, and to be broken off by any one of the people, I mean, yeah, I totally get why that would be something that's hard to explain. Treetops being burned. Yeah, if there were nuclear things going on out there, fine by itself. Crazy, something you could look at with a bunch of different explanations. Every single one of the dead people, right, and how they died would be an investigation by itself. But now you have all of this stuff in one area. And that's why this whole thing makes no sense and why people have still, like, we're talking about it now, for God's sake. Because it's like it's too much. It's like the aliens, Yeti, KGB, all of this conspiracy stuff converged on this group of hikers and fucked them up. Right. And then they all kind of looked at each other and high-fived, and the Yeti went home. Aliens flew off. KGB went back to their hole in the ground and called it a day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking we're forgetting something, something simple that may be overlooked, like the extreme cold. I think when people, even here, when it gets so cold, your lips crack and they bleed. You get bruises from too much severe cold. And if they're on ice, you slip and fall, you're gonna really have a nice little bruise or break or something. And it's if you fall on something like you said. And then, birds, they go straight for the eyeballs, things of that nature. So I'm thinking the one key factor outside of the radiation is the cold. So, I mean, would a tree typically break in natural environment, a branch or whatever? Probably not. But if it's like really, really cold and just won't move, but if you swing on it, it might give away. That's just some of the thoughts that I got. I mean, I think the cold can really trigger a lot especially in psychology, when people are thinking and they're experiencing that bitter cold, and somebody's taking their clothes. It's like people freak out. I'm cold. I'm not going to die out here. Give me your clothes, or I'm going to take your life. Stuff like that can kick off, unfortunately. But that's just kind of the route that I'm going, outside of the KGB involvement and the alien involvement.
And in 2019, to finalize the information I was given, in 2019, the Russian government opened and closed the case, saying that it was an uncommon natural disaster called a what's it called? It's called like a slam avalanche. Yeah, slam avalanche. Basically, it's a very rare incident to where they said their conclusion was that when they pitched the tent, um, you have the packed end snow, and then you have a lighter section of the snow that wasn't super packed. And whenever they staked the tent, it caused this slab avalanche, which would have freaked them out and caused them to leave the tent. Um, However, if there was an avalanche, then they would not have found the stake of the tent, and the part of the tent would not have still been left up.
Mhm.
There was also meals left out, so they were there for a while. So the fact that that's what they concluded years later, 2019, that's just a few years ago,
Mhm.
they open and close this case as just an uncommon natural disaster called a slam avalanche, which doesn't make sense. Like, to me, it
No.
doesn't. And the fact that, again, it was the Russian government involvement that decided to close the case is that, which does make it weird, man. I mean, I think that if we are going realistically and not, based on just what we do know, not the fact that aliens are out there or whatever, let's remove the alien factor, then I think the Russian government was doing something and they saw it and then they decided we're removing them. Especially if they're experienced hikers and they've done all these things.
Mhm.
They were probably tough fighters. I mean, I imagine they were probably fighting pretty tough back towards whatever was after them.
But what could it have been? That's my thing.
Right.
Like, my God, to do the amount of damage. Like, the chick got shot and
Yeah.
she finished her hike.
Right.
You know,
She
like
felt bad for it too. Like, she felt bad that she was holding back the crew on that hike.
Yeah. So you've got this tough ass group of just Russian folks, right? I mean, a weird mix of like X Games and nerd scientists, right?
Right.
So they're smart. It's not just that, they're experienced hikers, they're smart people. And while I think, evolution, you're probably very close on to what could be factual with the cold. I mean, let's go back to the case that we talked about. It was it last week or the last one or the one before with the
Right.
dudes that got outside in Iowa or Missouri, wherever it was.
Mhm.
Right.
They didn't beat the shit out of things. They didn't throw. I mean, yeah, there could have been drugged up and everything else, but you talk about the survival instinct. I mean, I don't know, man. It just seems like logically, it just seems like something was coming after them and it was taking them off one or two at a time. And these people were coming and they were finding their friends and they were taking their clothes and everything. And it just got to a point where they're like, man, we got to beat feet. We got to get out of here. And whatever it was caught up to them in that ravine and
Right.
finished the fucking job.
Right.
I mean,
You said the lady was shot.
Yeah. Prior. This was a prior incident. Yeah.
Prior.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
this was
She's
not. This
badass.
was not during. No, this was something prior. They were during the first part of all the research. They kind of explain each person, each character, and all of them have history of doing things that are kind of outstanding. They're very, very, and they're engineer students. Like, they went to a tech school. They're very, they're intelligent. They literally did this for the fact of how intense it was supposed to be.
Okay.
So they knew what they were going into. And they actually said that the trail that they were on wasn't even that bad of a trail. Like, the temperature wise, yes, but the trail itself wasn't like that bad. It was more bitter cold, the extreme weathers. That was the factor that made it so intense.
And up until the point where they were at their campsite, every group of folks that they ran into in the villages and everything else said they were in fine spirits. Everything was great. They were jamming with them. That's the other, again, it's all this evidence of like, this doesn't, if you add this to this, it doesn't add up. It just doesn't add up.
Right. And at the end of the day, we can all have our explanations, but none of us are ever going to know the right answer. And that's the whole point of this show, was to not have a a right answer, just to kind of have the ideas. Which is why I picked this case next, and I think it's a good case, and I think the biggest things for me are like the cracked ribs, the fractured skulls that aren't explained by just a normal fight between humans. I mean, there was more to it. The tree branch is broken, so these little details don't add up to like a accurate answer.
Right. Well, and two, like, I've seen firsthand a guy get beat in the skull with a heavy beer stein, multiple blows, and didn't end up with the kind of damage you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
and if it was KGB, this wouldn't have been a case. The bodies would have been gone and removed. I feel like there wouldn't have been anything to find. There wouldn't have been a tent. There wouldn't have been anything to be found.
Yeah, but maybe it was not exactly the KGB in the beginning, but it was somebody connected to them. I mean, once they had people start finding bodies and stuff, even the KGB can only do so much as far as not making themselves look so guilty. You know what I mean? So maybe they heard about it, or word got back to them, and then that's when they came around and could only do so much because it was already exposed.
That's good. Yeah.
Here's a thought.
Yeah.
We're just taking it on its face where you've said multiple times, well, it was this nuke, testing facility. Mm-hmm. Really? Is that what it was?
Right. Exactly. Right. Could have been something else.
You talk about Lockheed Skunk Works and this shit here in this country and the insane stuff that they're doing. The Area 51, that's not the play. I mean, that used to be the thing, but now it's just, my understanding from the whistleblowers and things, they're still doing stuff there, but it's like, that's the old school cover place. The Skunk Works is where all the real shit's going down, and the technology to just that is so far beyond things that we could even conceive right now is what's going on there. So, and if you jump back, Nikolai Tesla and the things that he created back in those days, I think we were far more advanced in many ways than what has been let on.
Right.
Right. So God knows what they were working on up there. I mean,
right.
They could have come across something that, they were the Russian government was flying a test craft out, and the only thing that happened was that they got caught in the wake of this thing blasting through the mountains, and it just blew the shit out of the campsite. And it's using electromagnetic propulsion, radiation, whatever, and these people just got caught in the wake. It could be that simple.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And the other theory that I kind of came up with was that maybe Igor Dyatlov, the one who this is named, the leader, maybe he knew something, and that's why he designed this trip. And maybe that there was something he was going to find, and somebody knew that he was looking for it and found them and eliminated them too, or kept him from finding it. I don't know.
That's interesting.
Well, for all you listeners out there, if you go camping, make sure you know everybody's name and who they really are.
Right. If there's a guy named Sasha and he's 15 years older than you.
Yeah, just randomly shows up, yeah.
Hell of a story. What do you think, guys?
Yeah.
Again, with the mystery, that you're bringing every time we do one of these is fantastic. It's, I think this one, the others were great because we could come up with some, I think, really sound theories. And sometimes at the end it was fun because we did the side by sides and it's like, oh my God, the mom, she's, whatever. This one is a little bit frustrating for me. And I remember it being frustrating when I read about it, because it's just, I like things to make sense, even with my, the way my brain works problems out. And this, it can't,
Right.
it can't work it
Right.
out. So, great story. Yeah, great case, but man, that's frustrating.
It is. I agree that it's frustrating, especially because there's not like. I think what frustrated me the most was at the end of it finding that they recently opened and closed it based on that such a simple theory as that. Just based on, and not even being like that most experienced of a hiker, like I just don't see an avalanche not just r- annihilating that. Like the way that the tent was found, still partially stood up,
Mhm.
stakes still showing out of the snow. Like
Mhm.
if there was an avalanche, that would have been removed. Like a simple stake would not have just been standing and
Oh,
holding up part of the tent. It would
yeah.
have, that force would have just ran right over that tent.
Well, and
And
two, almost the time jumps in the way the bodies were clothed. Again, I think something was stalking them.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
I agree.
yep.
because the manner of their dress, it makes sense where like somebody gets taken, like something happens, their group scatters, and they start coming back, and say most of them get back, but Yuri, I don't know, analysis, whatever
Yeah,
his fucking name was,
right.
is dead. All right. So somebody grabs his clothes, they put him by the tree, you know, and I mean, it seems like it's parceled out.
Yeah, that for it to not be an avalanche. Yeah, it wasn't like with
Mhm.
such a short time span. It was like over several hours that this probably all happened,
Right.
and they didn't make it very far from the tent. I mean, they were found under snow, but like it just if the tent caused the avalanche, that it would have been a very quick just and done. It wouldn't have been like they wouldn't have had time to do a den. That they probably wouldn't even be worried about a den. They'd be trying to get the out of there.
Right.
Mhm.
And it wouldn't be food anywhere. They wouldn't have had
Right.
time to
Right.
eat.
Yeah, just sit
Right.
there and set up a plate and yeah, put up everything in the tent and just kind of make it seem like they were just hanging out.
And
And
then
how,
there's the
I don't
the
know.
burning at the top of the tree too,
Thank
which
you. I
is
was going to say, how many avalanches cause burns at the top of trees? I
Right.
mean, I can't count the times I've seen avalanches of snow causing forest fires.
Only on the tips of the trees.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that it's hard to really pinpoint one thing on any of it.
okay. Okay.
Uh,
All right. Here's my
go
final
ahead.
analysis.
Final
All right.
analysis. It
Here we
better not
go.
be too out there.
Here we go. All right. They're in this area 200 miles from everywhere.
Right.
It's cold. They venture off somewhere they're not supposed to go, which had radiation. It explodes, which causes an avalanche. And then they try to survive. And they end up in this little area where they slip and fall. And then the birds come out and take the eyeballs. And there you
But the
have it.
avalanche doesn't explain the tent staying up either.
Well, it's not a huge avalanche. It's like an explosion. An avalanche just kind of caves down, but an
Yeah.
explosion causes things to come from a different direction. You know what I mean? And
Right.
if it's an explosion, radiation wise, that it could burn the top of the trees and maybe even knock some branches down and
Okay.
burn some people's skin.
Sure.
That's plausible.
It's plausible. It's definitely plausible.
Interesting.
That is an interesting theory, evolution. Next time you're not allowed to say anything.
Well, to add on to what he said, what
Yeah.
kind of explosion? I'm saying, I don't know, an energy blast
Alien.
from a spaceship.
There you have it.
There you go.
There are
Who was
aliens
driving the spaceship? The Yeti.
in the co-
Exactly.
who obviously had a thing for eyeballs.
Right. Yeah. Some little souvenir eyeballs just hanging out in the jar.
Oh, so this is like the precursor to the Predator.
Oh my goodness.
Well, as always, guys, I always appreciate you guys coming on these shows. I do.
Absolutely.
I feel like these shows are a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually have been reading and doing a lot more research, which makes me feel good because I feel like I haven't read in a long time.
Mhm.
And it's fun. And I've already got a few different cases lined up for the next couple shows, and
Sweet.
I'm really getting into this, man. So I appreciate you guys,
Awesome.
and I appreciate everybody that's been tuning in. And actually, even without the people tuning in, this show's been getting a lot of traction, even compared to my
Hey,
other
man.
shows.
Oh,
Hey,
sweet.
man,
Nice.
I really enjoy the brain teasing behind it. It
Yeah.
makes your mind wander in areas it normally wouldn't to
Yeah.
try to figure out some of this stuff. But yeah, I really like that idea of everything.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And
Yeah.
which hence the perception of it. It's
Yeah,
trying to
absolutely.
get you guys throwing in those random little curveballs is kind of the whole point of just maybe it was just, well, here's something that happened that kind of counters that. That kind of stuff makes this a lot of fun. So
Could it have been Hunter Biden? I'm just saying, Russian collusion, right?
This was post World War II, so I mean, come on now.
It's just a theory.
Oh my goodness, that was great.
Sean, Evolution, I appreciate both of you guys being on the show tonight.
Hey, thanks for
Gratitude.
having me. Glad to be here.
Definitely.
Yeah, and until next time, we'll see everybody around.
Take care.